calling it, an energy advice roadshow starting on the 24th of March. So I mentioned that in on the last PowerPoint presentation slide. So if you want to make a note of that, please do, and please then advise your participants also about that. So the content today, I'm going to cover the current energy crisis. So that covers the price cap increase, the additional support that's been put in place, what to do if your energy company goes bust, and why energy advice is important. Then I talk a little bit about income maximisation and what support is out there to maximise clients and yourselves' incomes, the priority service register and what the advantages of that, a little bit about smart meters and kind of smart meter myth busting. So have you heard of things that actually aren't true about having a smart meter installed? Then energy efficiencies and ways to reduce your spending on that, and then what support is out there if you do need help with your energy bills. So the current energy crisis, there's been several factors that have kind of made the increase happen so quickly and so high, really. Basically, the international gas price has massively increased, and that is, as Britain, we get a lot of our electricity from gas production. So that's why it's not just the gas that's actually increased, it's both gas and electricity that's caused that massive increase. And also there's been a lot of energy companies failing. So in the past 6 months, the last year, there's been 27 energy companies fail. So that means that they've gone into administration or gone bust. As I've said, the wholesale price for energy, for gas and electricity, has quadrupled in the last year, and it's going to affect a lot of people that are on low incomes and maybe on means tested benefits, but it is going to actually affect all of us. So this is why, although it's good to maybe pass on to your participants, we're also going to be affected by this. Everybody will be affected by a 54% increase in their energy bills. So the price cap was actually introduced to help low income and vulnerable households pay a fairer price for their energy. And this price cap is now estimated to support and help around 22 million households. So I'll explain what I mean by the price cap in a second. And this is increased by 7 million in the last 6 months. So it's gone from 15 million to 22 million people on that price cap. So you would be protected by the price cap. If you're on a standard tariff, you might be on a standard variable tariff, and to know whether you're on them, you're not basically in a fixed tariff. So if you've not switched for a while, you've not switched to a new tariff or a new provider for a while, you're probably on the standard tariff. If your energy company went bust and you have moved over to a new supplier and that new supplier hasn't asked you to go on a fixed tariff, then you will probably be on that standard tariff again. So you were maybe one of the people that's increased to that 22 million households. So the current price cap has increased by 12% for credit customers and 13% for prepayment customers. So what I mean by credit customers, you pay for your energy after you've used it. So you either get a bill, you might have a direct debit set up, a standing order set up, or you might use a payment card to pay for that, but you get a bill after you've used the energy. A prepayment meter is exactly what it says on the tin. You've paid for it and then you use it. So Ofgem on the 3rd of February announced that the price cap was going to increase from the 1st of April to the end of September with an unprecedented 54% increase. And that, as I've said, won't just affect people on a low income. It will affect pretty much everybody. Everybody will feel that. Unless you're on a fixed tariff, you will feel that. So this means that the typical household consumption, the typical usage for a direct debit will have increased by £693 and for a prepayment customer by 708. But what I try and advise people is to look at that 54% increase. So obviously if you use more energy, it'll cost more. So use the percentage to figure out that. Or if you use less, you'll pay less. And again, actually you might use less than what the average is, the typical usage is, so it will be less than that. A point to note, these typical usages that have been provided were pre-COVID. so won't kind of take into consideration people that are working from home, for example, or staying at home for a bit longer or more. Obviously, last year and the year before, there was a lot of working from home and children being at home a lot of the time. So obviously, as I've said, if you use more, you will pay more. So the additional support that's been offered via the government. So on the 3rd, again, they timed it very well when the 54% increase was announced. The government said, well, actually, these are what the packages that we're able to support people with. So the government announced that they would be able to give a discount, and I use that word I underline it verbally, a £200 discount on energy bills through the autumn, so you'll get it probably taken off your October bill, and that is awarded to everybody in Great Britain. This is a discount that you have to pay back, and that is taken from your bill every April, £40 every April for the next 5 years to pay that money back. Now, I think it's worth highlighting that it's very well timed, that £200. So it goes out of your October bill, and actually the price cap is due to be reviewed and increased potentially in October again. So it's worth noting that that £200 could cover an increase in April and an increase in October. They've also announced that there's a £150 non-repayable rebate from council tax. So this is 80% of the population of England would be eligible for this. So if you're in band A or A to D properties, you will be eligible for this. And Wales and Scotland have got a kind of a similar funding design. But the A to D will reduce by £150 of council tax. It's worth noting on that, maybe yourselves or the clients that you're supporting, that £150 would be worth more money if you are entitled to something called the council tax reduction. So it's worth kind of making a note of that and going, actually, can I prompt people to think about either looking at my own bill or looking at your participants' bills for council tax and saying, are they eligible for the council tax reduction? Because if they then if they've got a reduced council tax bill and they only have to pay £200, that £150 is worth a lot more to that. That is a percentage. They've also announced that there's a discretionary fund for local authorities to support people that aren't eligible for that £150 but are still potentially going to need that support. So for example, if you're a student or if you have somebody living in the house that has a severe mental impairment, sometimes they don't pay council tax at all, and that's when they could apply for that 144 million. Obviously not the full 144 million, just £150 of it. But how they apply for that hasn't been announced yet. I think it's a case of maybe checking back in on the government website in a few weeks' time. They've also announced that they're extending the warm homes discount from 2.2 million to 3 million, and it's increasing by a massive £10. That's not really going to cover the cost for the £700 increase, but that announcement was kind of made before the energy crisis happened, and as Citizens Advice nationally, we're campaigning for a larger support package for the most vulnerable. So people that are normally eligible for the warm homes discount are people on low incomes and have vulnerable households. So we are trying to ask for additional support to be given. Just a quick one on the do's and don'ts if your energy company does go bust. So the first thing to say is you will still have a supply of gas and electricity. I think Julie mentioned that her energy company has previously gone bust, and she was just moved to a new energy company straight away, and it was quite seamless. What we do try and say is do take a meter read as you hear from the energy company going bust. We say to keep an account balance, kind of check if you've got any, if it's an online, take a screenshot of your account balance. If you've got any bills, keep hold of the paper copies of them. The regulator Ofgem will move you to a new supplier, and if you've got any credit, your money is protected and you will get that money back. I'm not going to lie, it's not a quick process to get that money back, but you are entitled to that, and it is protected. The don'ts are: don't switch tariff or supplier when your account is being moved over to a new supplier. Wait for that to be fully moved over. That's just to not complicate things. And then we also say don't cancel your direct debit straight away. Wait for the new supplier to get in contact with you to say, this is how we want your payments to start up, if you can set that up. That's really important, because you are actually still using that energy, and we don't want to advise clients to stop making payments because they'll get themselves in arrears, and that might not be a quick process. So you might have a few weeks, few months worth of payments that are due, and we don't want you to get in arrears with that. Something that's worth pointing out as well, you've got the direct debit guarantee, so even if that money's going to the old supplier, the new supplier will be passed that money on eventually. And if any clients are worried about their energy companies going bust, and hopefully, touch wood, we might have seen the last of energy companies going bust, but with this price cap announcement, I do think that there could be the chance of it happening again come April. So it is worth kind of remembering this information to support people, support yourselves. And if you are concerned or worried, the Consumer National Advice Line is there for you to get in contact. So why is energy advice important? Obviously, it's really important at the moment because a lot of people will be affected by that massive price cap increase. These figures are slightly not out of date, but are the last ones that we've got based on 2019-2020. So fuel poverty affects 10.3% of households. I do think that will have increased, unfortunately. 38.6% of households with long-term ill health or disabilities are in fuel poverty. Obviously, that household might be using more energy to help them cope with that long-term illness or disability. And unfortunately, cold homes do make people ill. 2018 to 2019, there was an estimated 17,000 excess winter deaths caused by cold homes. So we are saying to people, please do not be living in cold homes. As I've said, low indoor temperatures are associated with cardiovascular disease and strokes. So we try and recommend for people to have the heating between 18 and 21 degrees. There's an established link also with cold homes and poor mental health. Obviously, if you're living in a cold home permanently, that can be really detrimental to your mental health, feeling like you are potentially struggling. So if you see anybody that may be showing signs of poor mental health, it could actually be linked to the fact that they might not be able to be affording the heating to be on. It might not be that they're having to limit that usage. So it's worth thinking about what support can be offered. So ways to increase your income or your client's income. So a benefits check straight away. There's around £11 million worth of unclaimed benefits within Greater Manchester. So we do advise for you to speak to yourselves, so this is to clients more than to yourselves, to speak to your support workers or coaches to maybe look at getting a benefits check. Then maybe that entitlement, as I've said, to council tax support. You might be working part-time and actually have a top up of universal credit, might have certain health conditions that you might be eligible for PIP. Or if there's children in the property that have got health conditions, it might be DLA, for example. There's all these little add-ons that could potentially maximise and be an increase to your income. So that means that you might not be worrying about actually putting the heating on. In terms of entitled support, so if you are on a low income, you might be eligible for things such as the Warm Homes discount. I do touch upon that in a second. The cold weather payment and the winter fuel payment. I'll also mention quickly smart meters and myth busting, and then the priority service register. So the Warm Homes discount, as I've said, is a government scheme, and it's currently offering £140, but it will increase to £150 from September time this year. Now, the money isn't paid directly to you or to the participants that are applying for it. it comes off your electricity bill, or if you're with the same supplier for gas and electricity, you can choose for it to be off your gas bill instead. We normally advise people to apply for it between September and kind of December, January time is when it starts to roll out, but it is on a first come, first serve basis, yeah. So try and advise people to apply for it as soon as possible, basically. And then the clients get awarded the money between January and March the year after. So it's worth kind of setting yourself a reminder to say, right, I'll make sure I mention this. Or again, it might be something that it's a relatively simple process to do. All you need is the client's account number for either the gas or the electricity, fill in a few details about what's the form of income, and tick which box kind of applies to them, if they've got any health conditions, if they've got children within the property, and then that makes them they'll then check whether the client's eligible or not, and then write to them within a certain amount of time to say you're eligible. It's worth noting that I can't give a standard, if you get this you'll be entitled, because each energy company has slightly different criteria. But what I would say is, if you're on a low income and so you could be low income and be working, or low income and a means tested benefit, that's something that I would say look into. There's other criteria, so you might have children within the property, or there might be health conditions within the property. That's something else that is part of the eligibility criteria. So these are really quick things to mention, but you don't have to apply for it. So the winter fuel at the warm homes discount that I've just mentioned, that's the only thing you currently have to apply for. So there is the winter fuel payment, which is a one-off annual payment of between £100 to £300. It's paid to you every winter when you reach pensionable age. The cold weather payment is a one-off payment that you receive if it's extremely cold outside. So that's £25 every time the temperature drops below 0 degrees for 7 days consecutively. This year we've not had it yet. It's not fallen below that for that set period of time, and clients automatically receive it through the next payment of either pension credit, income support JSA, income support ESA, or universal credit. So it's worth noting that they would potentially receive that money, but again, you don't have to apply for it. It's just to say, if somebody says, oh, I've got an extra £25 and I don't know why, it potentially could be that. So smart meters, I'd be really interested to know if you have smart meters, how you feel about smart meters, if we can have a little bit of a chat afterwards. But it's worth just noting, smart meters are a new style of gas and electricity meter that sends automatic meter reads to your supplier. You can choose from this to be every half an hour, which is like the most meter reads that can be provided, or every month, which is the least, and you can go in between that. Smart meters are for both prepayment and credit customers. So just in terms of the advantages, it will make you have more accurate bills, so you pay for what you use. Sometimes if you don't give meter reads, energy companies can estimate how much you're using, and they can either overestimate and you're paying too much, or they can underestimate, which personally I think is a little bit worse. You can underestimate and you're not paying enough, which means that you'll build up arrears. So it's really, smart meters are a really good way of going, I take that stress away from me, trying to remember when I need to give a meter read. Smart meters can give them meter reads as regularly as you would like. It's a better way of understanding your usage. So you get a little in-home display, and that shows you how much energy you're actually using. If you can set budget, you can sometimes set budgets. So you can say for throughout the week you want to use £1 at £1.50, £2, and then at the weekends you're all right spending £1.75. You can kind of say to yourself, right, I'm allowed to do this or I'm not allowed, and it'll kind of sometimes have a traffic light system. So green, you're doing great. Amber, you need to think about it, and red is probably if maybe the kids have had their Xbox on for the last 5 hours. So these are all things that are potentially positives for you. It won't reduce how much you're using, but because you can physically see it, it means that you're more aware of what's actually happening instead of just assuming that you're doing everything that you should be doing. Obviously, when there wasn't an energy crisis, smart meters also meant that you were potentially offered a broader range of tariffs, and sometimes they could be cheaper. At a national level, they were actually smart meters are the way forward in creating kind of more flexible, cleaner energy systems. So they want to be able to see how people use their energy so that they can actually advise for them to offer cheaper tariffs at different times. So, for example, if you've got an electric vehicle, charging your car at night would be potentially the cheapest option, instead of charging it at like 7 o'clock at night when everybody's making the tea and putting the washing on and whatever. They're trying to look how everybody uses it. Instead of it peaking and troughing, they can maybe offer a little bit more of a steady kind of energy usage throughout the UK. If you're on a prepayment meter, it was particularly beneficial for you. Energy suppliers offer then different ways of topping up, so you don't have to go to the shop to top up every time you're running out of credit. You would be able to top up on your phone, for example, or top up online. And that was really good to highlight to people when the pandemic was at the height and people were either vulnerable or clinically vulnerable and physically wasn't allowed to really go out of the house. They could be moved to a smart meter, prepayment, and they could just top up on the phone. You were also able to, as I've said, see your balance on the in-home display, so you won't unknowingly go out of credit. So as I've said, it shows how much you're using, but then also what your credit potentially is, so that you can go, actually, I'm only on £2 and I've got to wash my hair, dry it, do this, do that. You could go, actually, I need to top up a little bit more money, and you could just top up on your phone, and it'd be as simple as that, instead of having to run to the shop when you're ready to go in the shower. You could also have automatic top up put on your phone as well. So I'm now going to talk about the Priority Service Register. Now, obviously, I am from Citizens Advice Manchester, so our network distribute operator is Electricity North West. So the best way I can describe what that means is the network operator to get the electricity to your property. So you might buy your gas and electricity, you might buy your electricity, from British Gas, E.ON, EDF, Utilita, any of them. They all use Electricity North West cables to get it to your house. So if there was ever a power cut, it's their responsibility to get the electric turned back on as quick as possible. And if you have certain vulnerabilities, means that you could receive additional welfare support via being on the Priority Service Register. So that could be yourselves here, or actually pass this information on to your participants could be really beneficial. So could they cope, or you cope, in a power cut? So recognised as a vulnerable person to go on the Priority Service Register, they might have a chronic or serious health condition. They might use electrical medical equipment such as a ventilator, nebulizer, apnea monitor. They might store medication in the fridge. And before I started my role as energy champion, I wouldn't have really thought about medication being in a fridge would mean that you'd be affected by a power cut. But actually, if you've got diabetes and you've got insulin stored in the fridge, or you've got certain cancers that mean that you've got morphine in there, obviously, if a power cut happens, that medication is affected by the lack of power. So is a stair lift, a care line, and an electric bed. So Electricity North West would like to know what's going on in your house in terms of the vulnerabilities, so that if a power cut happened, they could assist in the best way possible. There's also things such as having poor mobility within the property, a temporary life change. So if somebody's recently come out of hospital, they've had a temporary life change in terms of they might have recently lost the job and kind of just need a little bit of support for a short period of time. They might have fled domestic violence, and again, a power cut on top of having to try and get themselves set back up could be really, really hard for them to cope with. So they would like to know about stuff like that. There's also the age related, so somebody of pensionable age, or they might have children under the age of 5. It's also worth noting because I heard you mention about it a minute ago, about young households, so adults but young households, so it might be somebody like 18 to 24, I think is what their class as a young household. So if you've actually got somebody that of that age, you could register them on this as well, just because if somebody is a young person and they might never have experienced a power cut before, they might not actually know what to do. So going on the priority service register could offer a little bit of additional welfare support, but also just kind of explaining what they need to do. Communication difficulties. So if somebody's got a visual impairment, hearing impairment, speech impediment, they can be sent communications different formats, or if English isn't the first language and they feel that actually they wouldn't necessarily understand what a power cut would mean if it was sent over in English, they could have it as language of choice that it's provided. There's also clients who suffer from mental health conditions. So I kind of split these into three. So somebody maybe with Alzheimer's or dementia, somebody who suffers from anxiety or depression might just need a bit of welfare support in terms of, depending on when that power cut hit, is with how they were potentially what they were experiencing through their mental health, or somebody that has a severe mental impairment, so or mental health conditions such as PTSD or schizophrenia, for example. It may be actually that power cut would severely affect their mental health. I previously had a client who's suffered from PTSD. Her coping mechanism was to have the lights on all the time. And obviously, if a power cut wasn't to happen. Hello.
Hi Jess, it's Ian here. Just to give you a heads up, the in terms of time, we're now at 9:30. Because some people now have to go on to appointments. So if we're able to finish up in the next 5 minutes and give people the opportunity to have some questions, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'm on track. I think.
Good stuff.
So just quickly, the advantages of going on the priority service register. They're aware of any communication. They will communicate, sorry, if they're aware of any planned or unplanned power cuts. So again, that's where I've mentioned a young household could potentially just be text and said, actually, there's going to be a power cut. This is what you need to do. They'll send confirmation 6 days before. Also, having a registered password or a nominated contact person could make that person feel a little bit more secure. So if they, for example, are cared for by somebody else externally to that property, they can also, the carer can also receive updates. And kind of finally, but most importantly, really, if a power cut does happen and it's for a long period of time, they can be offered additional welfare support such as hot drinks, food, small generators and alternative accommodation. So just in terms of energy efficiencies, I've got some quick videos that you can watch there that are really useful and breaks it down into certain places that you can see the energy efficiency habits. So for example, kitchen habits, how to rectify any drafts, how to be more efficient with your laundry, heating and radiators, and just a quick breakdown of how you use your energy within the house and how much it can cost. So it's normally around 65% of heating your home. It costs to heat your home is around 65%. Heating water is around 17, appliances 13, cooking 3, and lighting 2. And just some quick top tips in terms of reducing your energy. Obviously, these are part of some of the videos that I've mentioned on there, but it's worth just noting, thinking about the appropriate temperature for your home. So like I said, anything between 18 and 21 is recommended. Anything below that can cause potentially like health conditions, but if it's above that, if that person feels the cold a little bit more, we can say to have it on more if that's due to health conditions, but whatever's appropriate for you. Maybe if you've got a movable thermostat, try and think about it being in the place that you spend the most time. So for example, your living room, fitting draft excluders around doors and windows. When you're doing your laundry, 30 degrees, try and keep pots and pan lids on whilst you're cooking. That'll that'll save all the energy within that pan first of all, but 2, stop condensation if you've got all the pan lids off. And this is a really big one, but a really simple one to do. Closing your curtains and then tucking them behind your radiators if you've got radiators. It seems a really basic one, but I feel like curtains have got a bit of a bad rep at the moment. They're not very fashionable, and people definitely aren't closing them. They're just there to make everything look pretty. And actually, windows are one of the biggest heat losses within the house. So trying closing your curtains is really, really advisable. Just some quick information regarding clearing your energy debts. So if either yourselves or the participants that you're speaking to say, actually, I feel like I'm now getting in debt with my energy company, what support is on offer? There are charitable trusts that you can potentially look into clearing energy debt. So British Gas Energy Trust Fund is actually open to anybody. You don't have to be a British Gas customer to be able to apply for it. The other companies below, so Scottish Power, OVO, EDF and Bulb, have their own for their own clients, but you can look into that again further. And then quickly, just some information about getting schemes for new boilers, for example, or wall or cavity insulation. So the energy company obligation, so the eco scheme we call it, isn't a government grant. It's an obligation placed on the large companies, and they make a payment towards all households being able to afford to have any energy improvements. So like I said, it's for energy efficiency boilers, wall and cavity insulation. That's available for people on certain means tested benefits. But if you're not on that, you can also look into the EcoFlex scheme or the Green Homes Grant, which is being offered by Greater Manchester Authority at the moment. It's also worth mentioning or speaking to LEAP, which is the Local Energy Advice Partnership, and they can offer practical energy advice. I've hyperlinked that the Local Energy Advice Partnership, which you can just see in blue there, so that you could click on that website and either refer yourself over or refer clients over to it as well. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it interesting and hopefully helpful. I've got a little presentation, a little survey there if people wouldn't mind filling that in for me. And as I've mentioned, that would be really helpful for me to be able to have some feedback, see if you found it interesting, see if you found it helpful and what parts you maybe think worked well or didn't work. And it's also worth mentioning about the roadshow that I mentioned about energising you and your finances. It will be held on the 24th of March. There's a few organisations. I know that Julie might want to mention something now.
Hey guys, we have a fuel poverty roadshow. It will be called just, what's the title?
Energising you and your finances.
Yes, and that will be open to our participants. We will have a lot of external partners coming through, so people like U-Switch, Northwest Electricity, United Utilities, Groundwork, Cadent Gas, Citizens Advice. Jess will be there. So we've got a lot of external partners that will be available on the date. Will be arranged as a jobs fair event. We've got 2 rooms booked at St. Anne's on the 2nd floor. And what we will be doing is having participants come in groups of 20 per hour on the hour. The event is aimed to start at 10 a.m. Please, we're getting leaflets promoted. This will be advice and guidance for the participants, and hopefully we'll get some freebies as well, like saver light bulbs, etc., that will support them around the event. Leaflets are being designed at the moment through marketing. As soon as those leaflets are available, they'll be sent out to the teams so that can be shared to promote the event. Any questions around that, guys, please get in touch with myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Julie, and thank you for that, Jess. Really appreciate that. There's been a lot of conversations happening in the chat, a lot of tips being shared. There's a couple of questions. One was, could I ask, is it useful to recommend the comparison sites as an alternative to reduce bills with another supplier?
That's a really good question, and it pains me to say no. Can you still hear me? Sorry, it looks like I've frozen. Sorry, it looked like I've frozen a little bit there. Just before I answer that question completely, I'm just going to put that Q&A at the survey in the chat, if that's okay, if everybody can click on that. And and fill that in. It'd be honestly really appreciated if you could do that. So comparisons, I wish that was the measure that people could save money, but unfortunately there's just not a cheaper tariff out there at this moment in time. So the price cap, as I've mentioned, protects low income and vulnerable households. And if you're on a fixed tariff now, I know that you can now see my screen. So if you're on a fixed tariff now, definitely do not switch from that. That will be the cheapest thing out there. Do not move. If you're on the standard tariff, the standard tariffs around here, and you just, for example, you're paying maybe 19p for electricity. What they're proposing, the new price cap, or what they're saying that the price cap will increase to, is maybe 25, 26p per unit of electricity. So that's a massive increase. And energy companies now have gone, well, we need to make some of our money back, because at the moment we're selling it at 19p and actually we're having to buy it at 23p, for example. So we're losing money. So we're having to suggest tariffs out there that are maybe 27, 28p. So the tariffs that are out there are more expensive than what the price cap is now and what the price cap potentially will be come April. There might be one or two that if you've got if you're with an energy company and you're on your fix, they might be offering a cheaper one to stay with them. There might be the odd one of them, but it's really not potentially worth looking. Like, I'm on a fixed tariff that finishes in June and I'm scared to death what my own will be, and I'm the energy champion. It's going up by like a third and a half. It's ridiculous.
Thank you for that, Jess.
No worries.
And guys, just a lot of requests for the presentation to be added. We will be adding it to the chat, and we will also add it to the chat channels for Restart Working Health and Jets as well. So that will be available to yourselves. And as I mentioned at the start of this meeting, the meeting is being recorded, and we will be adding this to the intranet. Any other questions, guys?
Somebody's just asked, is it better to have a smart meter if I'm on a fixed? Like I've said about the kind of the benefits of having a smart meter, to me, it just takes the responsibility away from me giving meter reads as regularly as what the energy company wants. So I would personally have a smart meter. I'm one of the not smart people, where I had the original smart meters installed, and my smart meter now isn't smart enough to talk to my new energy company. But all the new smart meters that would be installed from, like, I think the end of last year, are now definitely all SMEC2, which means they're smart to speak to any energy company, no matter who you're with.
Do they cost, Jess? Do they cost you?
No, they're free.
Oh,
there was kind of a rollout charge put in everybody's energy bill.
Okay.
And it's been there for quite a while. So although there isn't a charge for it to be actually installed in your house, there was probably a fee at some point in everybody's bill. So you've paid into it anyway. So
right.
You might as well.
Yeah, right, thank you. Quick
question, Jess. If you're renting the property, do you need your landlord's permission?
That's a really good question. And actually, I did a myth busting. I had a slide with some of that questions on, and I was like, no, I can explain that, and then I forgot to explain it. So it's a really good. I didn't want the presentation to be too long. Smart meters in rented properties. So if you pay the energy company and the bill is in your name, you can request a smart meter, but we still advise for you to get the landlord's permission. Although the smart meter is actually owned by the energy the meter is actually owned by the energy company, but we do advise for you to just double check with the landlord if they're all right with that. If it's the landlord who you like maybe just pay a set fee of like maybe £500 that covers your rent, your council tax, your internet and whatever else, and your energy bills in that, then it's up to that landlord to get the smart meter installed.
Great, thank you for that, Jess. So a couple of responses coming back. They are completing your survey, so thank you guys. We do kindly ask if you could take the time and complete the survey. It will be really useful to the support and measures that Jess and her colleagues put into place, and it just feedback that's really, really useful for themselves. We're coming close to the meeting timed it really well. Thank you for that, Jess. Any last questions, guys, before I stop recording, and also thank Jess as well? No. So just what I will do is I'll stop recording the session first of all, and stop recording. There we go.